Hello, America. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show freeing America one enslaved mind at a time, standing for God, family, country, and helping those that are oppressed. And that really forms the crux of what we do. In this particular segment, we're going to be combining a lot of what Whitney Webb said and how it intersects with what I've said and what I believe. And it's going to be interesting too, because at some point, I think maybe next week, I'll get Sarah on, and Sarah Westall and I will compare notes as well too, because there's no question what's coming. What is coming is the beast system. And I'm going to walk you through the progression here. It's unmistakable. And first of all, if you think this is real, you think there's a possibility this could happen in your lifetime, or you're worried about the Strait of Hormuz, the supply chain and all that goes with that, you really need to think about storable food. Okay. If you go to My Patriot Supply, and you can get there by going to preparewithdave.com. If you do that, what you're going to find are specials. You're going to find 25-year shelf life, free meals, and tell you when you taste it, you'll go, I can't believe it's this good. That was my first reaction. Lots of variety in the food, so you don't habituate and get sick of eating the same thing over and over. And it's high in calories. And wait a minute, high in calories. Okay, we're conditioned to recoil, but if you're eating to survive, this is what you want. 2,000 calories per day and so reasonably priced and 25-year shelf life. So even if you miss this crisis, the next one you're ready for. The worst thing that happens is you eat your mistake. So what do? You go to preparewithdave.com. That's preparewithdave.com. And I'm going to recommend too that you find a way to hide, because I believe if what we're telling you comes to reality, we will see anti-hoarding laws, and this could bring this into effect. So you'd be wise to think about, how can I store this in some safe and secure place? And I would say not in your house. All right. Whitney Webb and I agree on one point. And this pastor that we talked about with the near-death experiences, this is where he got my attention. He said it's going to come in through a false flag, a manufactured crisis designed to manipulate behavior. And I believe what we went through 6 years ago was a beta test. Oh, I'm not saying that wasn't real, but I think they tested the public's reaction. Also, we've seen testing of this in places like Nigeria. And Whitney talked about this. I've reported on this, and boy, I think I got some of the lowest rankings I ever got. No one wanted to take the Nigeria things because it's Nigeria, it's not here. Do you understand they're not going to beta test this in America with the digital system? They're going to beta test it somewhere where people aren't going to pay attention, don't care what's going on there, and they're going to ignore it. And this is why Nigeria becomes important. All right, let's start with what Whitney and I agree with. We're going to see a partnership between the Federal Reserve, they're private. Oh, they work with government mandate, but they're privately owned. They have their own stock, they have their own board of directors. Okay, so it's going to be a public-private partnership. The Fed with the banks. You say that already exists. Exactly. But they're going to bring it in a privatized fashion. And I believe they're going to do it through a third party corporation. Could be Palantir, it could be a number of things, but they're going to bring it in because it's harder to regulate. Because when the debanking starts and the abuse of the people starts with their money, it can't be governmental because there'll be legal pushback in the system and constitutional rights will come into play more so than if it's a private situation. Okay, now we all agree on this. Everyone I talk to agrees on this. The first step in this is to get a digital ID. And then you need to collapse your monetary system. And if that's not working, and right now with the Gulf of Hormuz, all that, Strait of Hormuz, all that stuff has destroyed the dollar. I think it's beyond repair. And if it is indeed beyond repair, one more crisis will push it over the edge. So what we both are, all of us are saying really, is a crisis will precede this event. Okay, so then they'll come out and say, you must get digital ID. The dangerous people that did this cyber terrorism. And Whitney says that's what it's going to be. Dave Hodges is already on record saying that's what it's going to be. And this is what the pastor saw. cyber terrorism, and they're going to probably, Whitney thinks it's going to be illegal aliens came into the country with nefarious purposes. Not all of them, of course, a small segment. We know terrorists have crossed into the country. They've been arrested. We've exposed that. And you could have cyber terrorists in the same mode, small in number, but big in power, and they attack the system. And then we have these announcements, just like what the pastor said. Whitney said the same thing. People are going to appear on big screens everywhere. They're going to appear on jumbotrons at games, on your cell phones, and they're going to say, "We've got to stop the threat." So how do they stop the threat? Well, everyone has to be, we have to know who you are. Privacy is bad because if you want to remain private and secret, well, you could very well be a cyber terrorist. Then we should really have to watch you. Now, in Nigeria, they tried to get people to move away from cash, and this is the goal. They want to go to a central bank digital currency, CBDC for short. And people are going to resist. They found this in Nigeria. It didn't work. And they even tried to go after the resistors somewhat. Then they backed off because they said, we're going to turn everyone against what we're doing. So they backed away. So what they started to do was they did deals with businesses to deny cash. Whoa, hold on here. We're already seeing this. It's sporting venues. I've had these two experiences now in the last 2 years. I don't go to a lot of sporting events. I go to a few, but I went to an Arizona Diamondbacks baseball game last year, and I discovered, and I reported on this, no cash. Absolutely no. You go there with cash, you're going home with cash. If you want to eat a hot dog, and by the way, they got some pretty reasonably priced concessions, but if you want to have concessions at the ball game, you are going to have a credit card or you're done. Okay, now, last February, went to visit friends of ours in Denver. So my wife and son and I trekked up there and we went to a college basketball game. Not an issue. But in a big venue, we went to the Denver Nuggets basketball game against the Boston Celtics. Huge deal. Again, no cash. Concerts, no cash. We've been to concerts where that's happened. So they get the businesses to make you cash starved. Now they're locking you into their digital system and you bypass the resistance phase. Now, what typically happens, and I agree with Whitney on this, the left will create a problem or the right will create a problem, and the other side will have the solution. It's two arms of the same decision maker. I call it flip side of the coin. We have a uniparty, people, and it's time that we recognize that. And to some degree, Trump is caught up in that. I'm not saying he's supportive of it. This is his agenda. I think his agenda is to go down as the second George Washington, but he's being blocked. And what we have now is a uniparty system that's going to bring in the Nigerian system. So let's review real quick. They had a national ID. They cut off cash. Okay. They bypassed the resistors by cutting off cash for the businesses. All right. Now we get into hell on earth. Now they have total surveillance control, i.e., data center monitoring. They know who's been naughty or nice. You need a digital ID to go online. Europe, look at Europe, what's going on there. If you don't think this is real, look at Europe. Digital ID necessary. They not only know who puts stuff up there, boy, I'm probably sealing my fate by putting pro-Christian stuff up here, but they also know what you're looking at. It reminds me of that song by the Police. Every move you make, every breath you take will be, my words, stalking you. Because that's what's going to happen. Now you're in the system. Now, for the good of society, it's responsible for citizens. We have to know who you are. You must be in the system. We got to eliminate the underground economy that led to the cyber takedown of our system. It's a crisis, people, and you all need to help us. It'll sound like it's really pro-society. Everyone who's reasonable should do this. You'll hear pastors who are deceived saying, Romans 13, do what the government tells you. Well, if it ends up being Mark of the Beast, you're not going to follow Romans 13 if you want to have eternal life. Remember what I told you in the last segment. Once you take it, there's no untaking it. You're condemned forever, according to the book of Revelation. I quoted that to you in the last segment. And this is exactly what Whitney and I have described in the past. You're going to see debanking. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your house. A spouse is going to leave another spouse because they feel like it's going to starve the family if we don't do this. I got to get out of here. And we look at this here, and they're going to keep selling you on the notion privacy is dangerous. You're pro society if you do this. This is really the way to go. And then it'll be on. And then it'll be survival mechanism. And I'm going to do a whole story on this. I may do a whole show on this where I'm going to talk about what are strategies Christians can employ to defeat end times mark of the beast. Now, this may not happen in our time. I can't promise that it will, but I'll tell you this. You better be prepared because it's coming one time or another. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show.